I'm not an abolitionist. I'm not saying, outlaw Monsanto and Tyson. I'm just asking for a viable underground railroad so that those of us who want to escape the enslavement and the shackles of the big pharma, big food, industrial food, government oligarchy can escape it if we want to, if we so choose.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for June 23rd through June 30th, 2025, while supplies last. This week we feature 1-ounce silver backdated Australian kangaroos at just $2.99 over spot per ounce. And with the Australian Kangaroo Monster Box at just 250 ounces, these are some of the lowest priced monster boxes on the market. Next, backdated platinum 1-ounce Australian platypus coins are just $119 over spot. And 1 10th-ounce Canadian maple leaves are only $45 over melt per coin. And finally, constitutional silver dealer's choice dimes and quarters are just 99 cents over spot per ounce. Again, some of the lowest premiums we've seen on silver in years. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have this well-beloved returning guest, Joel Salatin, one of the co-founders of Polyface Farms, a widely sought-after speaker and educator and active teaching farmer from the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, and also was recently almost selected to be influential in the U.S. Department of Agriculture under the Trump administration, has some recent and new insights into what direction things are heading there. We'd love to find out more about that. Joel, thank you for joining us here again on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you, Don. Again, it's always great to visit with you. You're always interesting questions and interesting thoughts. So last week, I literally had an hour with Callie Means, who is RFK Jr.'s right-hand man there at HHS. I don't know what his official title is. He's not a Senate confirmee, but I think he's just in on the inside of things. He and his sister Casey Means, who's up for Surgeon General, wrote the book Food Energy, and really have kind of taken the country by storm in what they've uncovered from food to vaccine to all sorts of things. And I had the privilege of we were both speaking at a conference, and so turned out of course I wanted to meet him, and turned out he actually wanted to meet me, and so we created an hour there that we could sit in a private room and just have a discussion. I had an agenda for him, and I had questions for him about things that I was interested in within the belly of the beast, if you will. And so I've got kind of two things to share to kind of start our discussion, Dunnigan. One is that, for those of us on the outside, we just look at it and say, just stop the subsidies, for example. Stop the new beautiful bill. I don't think people realize it has another $30 billion for farm subsidies for the same crops we've been subsidizing, the same way we've been subsidizing, as if they need $30 billion more, subsidy dollars. And for those of us on the outside, we look at these things and just say, look, just stop, enough. And what's interesting is that the Farm Bill, or the USDA policy and the Farm Bill and all that, the figure he threw at me was 30 million. I don't know if it's more or less or whatever, but 30 million jobs. And when you start playing around with 30 million jobs, that's a big voter block. Big voter block. And that's something that I think, unless you're different than me, those of us on the outside, we don't think that much all the time. We look at these policies and we say, look, just do the right thing. Forget, why does Coca-Cola and Mountain Dew get $15 billion of SNAP money. Why do people with SNAP money, are they able to buy Lunchables that are $14 a pound instead of buying grass-finished beef for $8 a pound? We just see all of this as being a dysfunctional mess, if you will. And when you get into it and you're in there, you're actually talking to senators and legislators and stuff, they don't see it that way. They don't see it. They see it as this is a 30 million jobs voter block. And as soon as you start messing with that, you're messing with people's jobs and people's livelihoods, people's careers, and you have all this emotional, relational angst going on with what seems very simple to us. And that was new to me. That was helpful. That was helpful because, it's frustrating on the one hand, but it's also helpful to understand just how big the ship is that we're trying to touch, that we're trying to turn around. So that came out of our conversation. That was kind of new to me and a new way to think, because at each juncture of my thoughts about what we could change, it was, let's see, that would affect 2 million jobs. Oh, that would affect 5 million jobs. Oh, that would affect, and I just don't think that way. And so that was interesting, and I hope that's interesting to your listeners. To think that in the real world, down in the belly of the beast, that's the way they think. And so he said, for example, as soon as somebody like you says, why are we paying for pesticides, for example, the whole farm food juggernaut jumps into, then we wouldn't be able to produce as much. We wouldn't be able to produce as much food. Everything's going to get diseases, and the bugs are going to eat them all up, and then we won't have enough food, and people won't have jobs, and the processing plants will be empty, and it all comes down basically to a jobs mentality, which was a very new thought for me. So that's on the one end.
I want to interject there, because I think that's a big factor that's happening in a lot of, when you end up with an administrative state that has taken on scope that's far, far, far beyond its original constitutional charter or responsibility. Yeah. You end up with this. You mentioned turning the ship. I'm picturing a ship covered with barnacles and barnacles and barnacles and barnacles and barnacles. And all of those can be jobs, and all of those can be profits, and all of those can be voters behind but that doesn't mean that that's what is the best for the country or the people. And 2 points. One is that you can justify not changing just about anything by saying it's going to impact jobs, and yet that's not the functional way, as you use the term dysfunctional. That's not the functional way to look at life and the potential for improvement and growth. Is, what are the legacy impacts, knock-on effects of this only, rather than, oh my gosh, just think about it. Because you talked to us the last time we had you on about how can you count negative economic things as positive GDP? How can you count prisons and the meals that you serve in prisons and all that as a positive contribution to the GDP? That should be a subtraction. That should be a negative against the strength and the of a country. Okay, so all that is number one. Is it changing anything? Yeah, it's going to impact jobs. But number two is, this is the excuse that gets trotted out regardless. And I think it's disingenuous in many ways, because, like, for example, when people say, let's not be doing military adventurism around the world, they say, but we got to support the troops. We got to support the troops. Or if they say, let's cut back on the Department of Education because it's disempowering our parents. It's miseducating our children. Oh, but we got to think about the kids. We need more money for the libraries, and we need more money for the schools because of the kids. There's always, you find the identified supposed underclass and say it's for them. It's not for these huge obscene corporate profits that just railroad over people and close all the family farms and end up with these megalithic processing plants and sick people in a sick country. So just to say that there's always going to be job impacts, both positive and negative. There's also going to be this excuse, this poster child of, oh, the poor, don't you care about these people, rather than, wait a minute, there's, for every person who's helping to create this processed food, there's thousands and thousands of people that are being poisoned by it. So anyway, go ahead. Those are the two comments I had.
Well, and for sure, it's also indicates an incredible lack of imagination for what would happen if you have a different paradigm. For example, if we had grass-finished livestock. I mean, let me just give you one example that's dear to my heart. If we didn't have a single concentrated animal feeding operation, no pig factories, no chicken factories, no beef feedlots, and we had not a single one of those stinky, smelly, abhorrent houses, and instead we did all of this on pasture, on much smaller farms, think of what we would not have. We would not need any of the pharmaceuticals. More than half of the pharmaceuticals used in the United States go into livestock. Well, we don't use any at our farm because the animals are happy and healthy. So suddenly, all that money, all that research, all those scientists, all those salespeople, all the people driving the, all the UPS trucks driving the, delivering the boxes of pharmaceuticals, suddenly are not needed. And instead, they do other things, whether it's, on the farm, moving chickens, whatever it is. And so the lack of creative imagination to even posit, okay, well, we don't have those jobs, but we have these other jobs. Mm-hmm. It's never a zero-sum game, but that's the way that's the mentality. And it's as you know, that's a completely bogus way to look at it, because there are tons of jobs that would be needed, in an alternative sector. Like another one real dear to my heart is what if we didn't buy a single bag of chemical fertilizer? Oh no, all those fertilizer factories go out of business, all that petroleum. Yeah. And instead we have chippers. We have thousands and thousands of wood chippers. We just don't spend $5 billion fighting forest fires, because now we're taking all those dead trees and all that extra biomass, we're chipping it, using it for compost. Suddenly we have thousands and thousands of jobs for little 5 and 6 person crews out, cleaning up biomass, weeding the woodlot, taking out the dead junk. Now we don't have firefighters, and we don't have all the insurance to pay for the catastrophic fire damage. And instead, we have people actually working in the woods, working in a carbon economy. And guess what? Now we have earthworms, because we're feeding the soil compost instead of 10 chemicals, and it doesn't kill earthworms. It helps earthworms, proliferate. And so we substitute, I would suggest, jobs that either stimulate dysfunction or are a result of dysfunction, and we substitute those jobs with jobs that are functional, sacred, meaningful, and actually head us off in a better direction.
And lead to longer life expectancies and lower morbidity and mortalities and all kinds of things.
Less flooding, fewer fires, less home burning. I mean, all of the things.
Yeah. Analogy here. A previous employer of mine, a solar company, hired a Gartner futurist consultant who came in twice a year to have us look far down the road. And he said, he said, the analogy I want to give you is that you're trying to cross the road here. You look left, you look right, you look left, you look right. Okay, safe to cross. You take a step and the airplane hits you in the head because you weren't looking for an airplane. You were looking for stuff on a different, you didn't really have your full eyes open. And he said, like with AI and self-autonomous driving cars or whatever, he says, why the meeting of those inventors of that technology are meeting with heads of, at the national level, heads of hospital systems and emergency rooms, and saying, guys, do you realize that this is going to be an absolutely revolutionary change to your industry, having nothing to do with changing medicine? And they're like, huh, what? He said, do you realize that, and I don't know the fact, 80%, something like that, of emergency room admissions are due to automobile accidents. And if we suddenly have 95% fewer automobile accidents, we're not going to need all those emergency rooms and body shops and that kind of stuff. And so for people to see that as a negative only, it seems so, there's got to be a term for it in debate, that is such a bad straw man of assessment of an argument, that it's beyond belief that the highest decision makers in the arenas of power in our country can get away with that as a justification for not doing anything. Because then you can just say, well, let's just not do anything. Well, let's not change anything.
Right. Well, it's like several years ago when I found out what was being done in Europe, for example, with infrared and artificial intelligence technology in slaughterhouses, to where they key in like E. coli, salmonella, things like this. See, all these things are seeable in the infrared spectrum, and they have a different. You can actually tune them like a radio.
We have a signature, right?
They have a frequency signature, every single one of them, and so what they're doing is they're either using real-time cameras in the slaughterhouse, or using swabs. You take a swab and you stick it in a little R2D2, and it reads the frequencies. And so I was actually, as you know, this whole food, I'll talk about food regulation in just a moment, but I've long been an advocate of empirical data. In other words, we've got the technology to be able to take swab samples, stick them in an R2D2, and spit out a reading. We've been able to do that for a long, long time. And I was mentioning this to a federal inspector here one time. Went through it. He said, "Oh, that would absolutely work." He said, "That would be interesting." And then he kind of stopped and hesitated. He said, "But then I'd be out of a job." No, I wouldn't like that. And so it turns out that the entire food safety inspection service, all those food regulators and safety, it's a jobs program. They could be completely substituted with technology, but instead it's a sniff and sniff and touch and all that. So that's the one thing. The whole way to look at change from a job jeopardization standpoint, that never even crosses my mind, because I'm always one step ahead, thinking instead of that job, we've got this job, and so it never crosses my mind. But to hear him articulate the fear and the pushback from the entrenched system that makes money on those jobs, on that paradigm, was new to me. So I learned something. So number two, and the reason I wanted to meet him, was to push my food emancipation proclamation. And I've been privileged now to move up into some higher circles. And so right now I am becoming very, shall we say, public and aggressive about a desire to get 30 minutes with Trump. I'm not, this is not a joke. 30 minutes with Trump to do a pitch for a food emancipation proclamation. Right now, if I raise a pig out here and butcher it in November around Thanksgiving when the temperature's good, and a neighbor comes over and says, "Oh, wow, that is so cool. Can I buy 2 pounds of sausage from you?" and I would love to sell it and make a little bit of my feed money back, it's illegal for me to sell him that pound of sausage. In fact, in our county and in most counties of the nation right now, you can't sell a T-bone steak, a pork chop, a ground beef. Excuse me. You can't sell anything like that. You can't sell a T-bone steak unless it's exported from your county to some federal inspected slaughterhouse, often as much as 150, 200 miles away, and then re-imported to your back door to be able to sell to a neighbor. And I'm suggesting that what we need is a food emancipation proclamation to allow direct neighbor-to-neighbor food transactions to occur between consenting adults exercising freedom of choice to determine the fuel for their microbiome, to give them personal agency. And I'm using all powerful, sloganish type words that we hear all the time, so that neighbor to neighbor food transactions can occur without a federal bureaucrat and a plethora of licenses and compliance reports and infrastructure gets in between that. And I'm not an abolitionist. I'm not saying, outlaw Monsanto and Tyson. I'm just asking for a viable underground railroad so that those of us who want to escape the enslavement and the shackles of the big pharma, big food, industrial food, government oligarchy can escape it if we want to, if we so choose.
This notion of reinvigorating freedom, liberty, again, we're liberty and finance here, so that people can live, can have a plentiful, bountiful life, can create food and share it with others in a way that's local and productive and meaningful, enhances local communities. It seems so obviously beneficial. And yet in all around our country, we just saw on a trivia show yesterday that what major retailer is it true that 90% of United States citizens live within 10 miles of? And the answer is Walmart. So this town in a box concept that comes in and plants itself near towns can also be called a town killer. That has become, now that's okay, but it's not okay to empower people to just do what comes naturally, what they were doing when they founded our country.
Sure.
And so,
yeah.
Again, you talked to us a few times ago about what you'd do if you were the head of the USDA, and this must be one of them.
This is the one. There are now, Dunnigan, as you can imagine, there are more and more with the MAHA movement, and I'm all for the MAHA movement. I'm not opposed, but with this rising wave of interest and now information about how corrupt and how bad things are, there are now more and more circulating petitions on, there was one just came across my desk last week about ractopamine. We need to outlaw ractopamine in pig production. It's some sort of hormone or something like that. And I struggle with these things because it's like, all right, now we've got some momentum, so let's outlaw their stuff. They've been outlawing our stuff. Now let's outlaw their stuff. And I'm saying, whoa, wait a minute. Let's not outlaw anything. Let's just let the market decide. Quit putting the government's finger on the scale and let the market sort it out. And so I'm not signing these petitions. I'm making some of my old friends angry, become this curmudgeon. But I feel like Thomas Massey sometimes, but I tell them I'm a one-string banjo. The thing is, this food emancipation project, the ability, think about the things that it would solve. We got AOC and Bernie Sanders running around the country talking about, we got to stop the oligarchy, Bernie. And what they envision to stop the oligarchy is a bigger bully government agency that's bigger than the oligarchy. We've been trying that for over 100 years, and look where it's gotten us. It's gotten us to coziness and collusion and, fraternization and corruption and, RFK Jr. calls it agency capture, and he's exactly right. It's gotten us agency capture. The answer to the oligarchy is to free up entrepreneurial, culinary, and farm folks who want to serve their neighbors. See, I'm done with the local thing. Locals become, no, I am a friend of local, but I'm using the term neighbor to neighbor rather than local, because I think it cuts it a little more from an argument standpoint. It makes it a better argument. When you say local, it's kind of nebulous. What's local? When you say neighbor to neighbor, that's something people can wrap their heads around. Yeah, I've got a neighbor right over there, and they want to buy quiche. All right, I can't sell them quiche. I can give it to them. They can buy it legally. They can feed it to their kids, but I can't sell it to them. Everything else in our society that we've considered hazardous, prescription drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, the prohibitions are on everyone. That you can't buy it, you can't sell it, you can't use it, you can't give it away, and you can't give it to your kids. Okay? But on food, the prohibition is only on you can't sell it. You can give it away, you can buy it, you can use it, and you can feed it to your kids. You just can't sell it. So clearly, this is not about hazardous, this is not about safe food. It's about what we allow in the marketplace. And so if we allowed, I could tell you, because I meet thousands of farmers, I speak all over the country, do lots of conferences, and the latent entrepreneurial desire in the countryside of this country to access neighbors with everything from chicken pot pie to homemade bologna is off the charts. Hundreds of thousands are ready to jump in here, but they can't because it's illegal to jump in. Jump in at a rate. See, the problem is all prototypes require embryos. You can't you can't birth an entrepreneurial idea, fully developed. You have to birth a baby. And so the problem is when the impediments to entry make the birth have to be great big, with a great big facility and $1 million worth of HACCP plans and paperwork and licenses and compliance, suddenly the baby is too big to be birthed. So what we have right now nationwide are hundreds of thousands of dreamy, entrepreneurial, idea, creative, innovative, food space, farmer space, wannabe participants whose dreams have to be birthed too big to be birthed, and so they're stillbirthed. And I think if I had 30 minutes with Trump to present this pitch this way, I can't think of anything more Trumpian than a food emancipation proclamation.
It's an exciting concept. It's an exciting thing. Actually, the first interview we ever did with you about, it was back in January of 14, was, I think, called "Everything I Want to Do Is Illegal." It was the name of one of your books.
Right.
And it was a big hit with our audience. Folks, you can still find that on our channel if you just search Reluctant Preppers Joel Salatin. It's one of those lovely interviews that we did. And it goes to the heart that we have this, not only this accretion of jobs that are non-productive or unhealthy for us, but laws and laws and laws upon laws, partly due to agency capture, as RFK and you have described it, which make it very difficult and painful without somebody who's got enough clout to just kind of take a wrecking ball to this and say, you know what, we're just going to allow this path to happen because it's a good thing. And with people becoming more educated about healthy food choices, some outlets. We had Steak and Shake say they're ditching seed oils and they're going all beef tallow, and there's billboards about that. And so sometimes you can have a commercial breakthrough that then sets for competitive pressure on the people that are still stuck in the companies that are still stuck in the stupid stage to stop doing that and get with the program. The same thing can happen on the micro scale that you're talking about too. If people know that they're free now, free at last, thank God Almighty, will be free at last to have food and share it with our neighbors. Joel, for people who want to read what you've written about this, who want to throw their voice behind you and help, how can they do so?
Well, I do a blog, and this is not the theme all the time, but I use my blog, and I don't do it on a routine. I'll do 2 or 3 in a week, and then I'll skip a week, and then it's not on any kind of schedule. But my blog is Musings from the Lunatic Farmer, and food freedom is a theme in there on those dramatically. And if I have any breakthroughs, or if I get an audience with somebody, I will certainly be sharing it on those blog posts, because this is near and dear to my heart. I've been crusading for this. Listen, people, when you read everything I want to do is illegal, you realize that we've had our baptism of fire in the past. We've had agents come here and say, you're illegal, we're going to put you out of business. And when you're a little small business and you have that big towering bureaucrat show his bronze badge at you and say, we're going to put you out of business, it's not funny. It chills your heart. And so many people, Dunnigan, throughout my life have kind of pushed back at me like, oh, come on, it's not that bad. This is a free country. You can do what you want. You're making a mountain out of a molehill, all that stuff. And what's interesting is that I've had some of those who have, taken me to task over years, suddenly enter this space and get that visit. And then I get the call. Wow, I thought you were overstating it, or, being, dramatic, whatever. And no, you're understating it. It's not, it's way worse than we imagine. I mean, the fact that, for example, at farmers markets, you can't slice a watermelon and give it out as a sample to a potential customer, because that becomes a manufactured product. And so, you can't let your customers taste a watermelon if you're selling watermelon. I mean, this stuff is, it's preposterous. And the more you dig into it, the more you realize how devastating it is for those of us who just want to bring our neighbors and community safe, stable, secure food. The pushback, as you can imagine, always is about food safety. Well, if we allow, farmer B to sell to neighbor A, what if neighbor A gets sick from his food? And my first response to that is, well, how many people are getting sick today from government approved food? Our hospitals are full of people that are eating government approved junk. And in fact, you can even put our obesity and type 2 diabetes epidemic straight on the 1979 food pyramid that put Twinkies and Cocoa Puffs on the foundational bottom of the pyramid. And so it should give us all pause to realize we'd all be a lot safer, we'd all be a lot healthier if the government had never told us what to eat. That's a fact. And number two, as soon as you say that, your philosophical assumption is that you can trust a bureaucrat more than a neighbor farmer. I'm not saying let's be able to sell to Walmart and export to Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. I'm saying personal, relational, producer, consumer, you can sell it, because it gets absurd. For example, we have a wonderful Mennonite, a little Mennonite specialty meat shop about 30 miles away from us. It's on a farm, and it's a family, and they're just they're just into making summer sausage. And I don't know if you I could basically live on summer sausage. I think if I had two or three slices of that a day, I think I could pretty much live, right on. Anyway, so they have this little shop. Well, we can take deer up there, which we do. We take deer up there all the time. We shoot a lot of deer. So they can do deer, but they can't do beef. So here we are, we've got federal inspected beef that we take to a federal inspected slaughterhouse that we would love to be made into summer sausage, but they're not licensed by the government to do that. But we can take them all the venison we want. We can get 200 pounds of venison summer sausage that they can do, but they can't do any beef for us. And our customers would love to have summer sausage. Love to have. I mean, there's nothing there would not be nothing better to send with your kid to school than a couple little roll pieces of summer sausage.
Yeah, pastured beef, you bet.
Absolutely, but we can't do it for them because because it's illegal at this plant that can legally do wildlife, because wildlife is not in commerce. Since wildlife does not impinge on the big Cargills and Tysons and JBSs of the world, then wildlife is fine. But if it's an amenable meat, then they can't do it. But this is the absurdity of these kinds of rules. In fact, here's the thing: even if we didn't want to sell it, and we just ask, could you just make this for us? We just want to eat it, along with our venison. We want to eat some beef, summer sausage. They can't even do that. They cannot have a pound of beef in the facility because that's an amenable, that's considered a commodity product.
This is an example is when you really call the bluff on any of this. The cover story is, oh, it's for the safety. Oh, it's for the it's for the kids. Oh, it's for the poor and the underprivileged. Oh, it's for the climate and the environment. Oh, it's for health and public health. When you really run it to ground, it's never about public health. It's never about the environment. It's never about the kids. It's never about the underprivileged. That's the cover story, and you can make it so clearly, logically obvious by such examples of these. We're going to have to regroup to carry on this exciting story further, because there are people who've been swatted by SWAT teams for selling raw milk. There have been doctors and pharmacists that have been under the thumb of the USDA and others and the FDA for just trying to do a good job of taking care of their people, who are told, thou shalt not do the right thing by your people because we're following WHO guidelines or whatever.
Right.
And we have spoken with constitutional attorney John Whitehead, founder of Rutherford.org, the Rutherford Institute.
Yes.
He stands up for the rights and does defense against government overreach in areas where it's needed. So there's a great coming together of minds. I think that is this is the time. The time is now, and it's been that way for a long time, but it's never been a better time. And Joel, you've been a big part of that, a thought leader in this area. Not just a thought leader, but you're doing what you can, and you're setting an example with humor, with wit and grit. And we're grateful for your presence always here on Liberty and Finance. So tell people how they can find out more about your writing and your farm.
Yeah, so our farm is Polyface Farm, Polyface, Polyface. The website there is very comprehensive. It has links to my blog, podcast that I do once a week. Video curriculum, events that we're doing here at the farm. It's comprehensive, as well as food. We ship nationwide.
That's absolutely right. We love your pastured poultry. Oh my goodness.
There's nothing like it. It doesn't feel like, it doesn't smell like, it doesn't look like. I mean, it's and yet they're nice and big and meaty and great. So everything from swag. If you want a shirt that says "Compost the Bureaucrats," we sell those. there's all sorts of swag there as well. So yeah, our website, Polyface Farms, love to have you join, and you can peruse that at your leisure.
Well, Joel, thanks for joining us again here on Liberty and Finance.
Thank you for having me.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for June 23rd through June 30th, 2025, while supplies last. This week we feature 1-ounce silver backdated Australian kangaroos at just $2.99 over spot per ounce. And with the Australian Kangaroo Monster Box at just 250 ounces, these are some of the lowest priced monster boxes on the market. Next, backdated platinum 1-ounce Australian platypus coins are just $119 over spot. And 1 10th-ounce Canadian maple leaves are only $45 over melt per coin. And finally, constitutional silver dealer's choice dimes and quarters are just 99 cents over spot per ounce. Again, some of the lowest premiums we've seen on silver in years. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.